I'm the professor. This is the moment of truth. Time's up for Time's Up. Oh, the jokes practically write themselves. Ever since KRS2, Tyrannosaur Tirana Burke, began her hashtag #MeToo and decided that she would have a photo op with the now notorious Rose McGowan, there had been this effort on the part of the white media to try to see if they could reverse engineer their own version of it. Because after all, Tirana Burke, if nothing else, she was able to at least associate her face with that particular hashtag, and well, Hollywood, for obvious reasons, felt that they needed a fresh start. So we've been telling you for the longest time that Time's Up was always controlled opposition. I personally detailed for you where Time's Up's money has been coming from. Steven Spielberg, J.J. Abrams, the big talent agencies like William Morris Endeavor. By the way, William Morris Endeavor, that's Rahm Emanuel's brother Ari, who runs that company. When you hear Terry Crews complaining about that agent who grabbed his junk a few years ago, that was Adam Bennett, one of WME's talent agents he was talking about. By the way, Bennett wound up having to resign and sent Terry a letter of apology. Time's Up's job would be to use star power to get themselves attention and hence legitimacy. And their white media connections would enable them to manufacture lynch mobs to go after men other than the ones who put their money into manufacturing Time's Up. Practically all the rich white movie makers and talent agencies who put their money into Time's Up have had a long and vomit-inducing history of sexual misconduct, or they've had issues much closer to home. Take Steven Spielberg, for example. I mentioned before that he has an adopted black daughter, Michaela Spielberg. Well, Michaela Spielberg has been sexually abused for years. And while she denies that it came from anyone inside the family, she said it came from outside the family. She never once has denied that it came from outside the home. That begs the question, Steven Spielberg, did he know anything about this? And if so, why didn't he do anything about it? After all, we're supposed to believe that this is one of the most powerful men in media, one of the most noteworthy guys in the history of film, and here his adopted daughter is being sexually abused for years by people outside the family, but certainly people that Spielberg would have known of, and yet this all happens right under his beard, and he has no idea about it. As with so many other victims of sexual abuse whose cries for help are not heeded, Michaela Spielberg these days is trying to get into the porn business. There's a lot of that going around. That's usually what happens whenever you have these females who've been sexually abused early on. That basically sets the frame for their mentality going forward. And as for Steven Spielberg, well, he's not saying much about that either. Now you have a black woman who for years was being sexually abused right under the nose of Steven Spielberg. Times like this, you would say, where is KRS2, Tirana Burke? But she declared a long time ago that she's not about to stick up for black women if it means going after someone other than a black man, as she herself put it. Why is it my job to go after white men? Yeah, if you're a black woman who's being sexually abused by white men, as far as KRS2 is concerned, you're on your own. My point is that where the men who put the money into Time's Up are concerned, these are men who have allowed sexual abusers in their space, if not had them on the payroll. These are the guys who came up with Time's Up. They went after Bill Cosby and R. Kelly, but never white men. They never got that lynch mob together for them. This is the epitome of controlled opposition. And the white media, understanding exactly what Time's Up is, they played right along with it. Time's Up's job was to stall for time, because outrage only lasts for so long. If it can't go on forever, and it never does, then it won't. We already know that creeps like Harvey Levin, they can't wait to be able to smear black men every chance they get. And do you think that he's alone? So this group that had been the front men or front women for going after black men for spurious allegations and just trying to put all the attention on black men, trying to make black men into the face of sexual predation. Well, as it turns out, these guys got caught working hand in hand, in fact, advising a white man accused of sexual misconduct, former New York Governor Cuomo. They pretended to be disappointed in themselves for not having handled the sexual harassment scandal with Governor Cuomo differently. when the truth of the matter is they shouldn't have been handling it at all. Now, for those of you who don't know, the CEO of Time's Up, Tina Chen, and Time's Up's chairwoman, Roberta Kaplan, both had to step down a couple of months ago after it was revealed that they had been in close contact with Cuomo after his scandal broke and that they were advising him on how to handle it. So, the people who said believe all women and who pretended to be outraged about all the powerful black men, like R. Kelly and Bill Cosby. R. Kelly was pretty much broke, and Bill Cosby, who's all butt. These are the same people who were working hand in hand with sexual predators like Cuomo, advising them on what to do about sexual scandals. Yeah, Time's Up tried to bill itself as being a sexual misconduct advocacy group, when in reality, as we said, they were nothing but a bunch of sexual misconduct advisors. But then again, that's why Time's Up existed. This is no loss, by the way, for the men who set up Time's Up. The entire point behind Time's Up was that it was always supposed to close up shop at some point. That's the entire point. It was supposed to dissipate the energy. That's the entire point of controlled opposition. People are angry about something. Let's set up an official organization that these angry people can go to. It'll be ready-made for them so they ain't got to build it themselves. Same thing that the left arm of white supremacy did with the Democratic Party. Oh, all these groups out here, the disaffected, the disenfranchised, especially black people, rather than them setting up their own organization that works in their interest, we'll set some up for them and tell them, hey, these are your spokespeople. The NAACP, Urban League, the Democratic Party, what have you. Controlled opposition. They invent a phony watchdog group and then pretend to be scared of them. The white men who invented Time's Up knew that that organization would never come after them. And that's why they had a black woman, Lisa Borders, as the first president and CEO of Time's Up. Remember her? Well, probably not, because she didn't last long. But she was the one who gave them entree to start going after black men heavy. She was there to provide cover, and that's exactly what she did. Until the very next year, when she was forced to resign her position due to sexual misconduct allegations against her son. Another case of white supremacy breaking their tool when they're done with it. After that, Tina Chen took Borders' place. And who is Tina Chen? She used to be Michelle Obama's chief of staff. Man, there's not even 6 degrees of separation between these clowns. Now, Tina Chen had been leading, or should I say misleading, Time's Up ever since, that is until last August, when she was forced to step down. And now Time's Up is laying off most of its staff. There's only 25 of them. I don't know what the hell they're supposed to have been doing. I mean, how many people do you need to sit around trying to come up with evil things to say on Twitter about Bill Cosby, but apparently they need 25 folks to do it. It's not like there's some massive organization or anything. They claim that this is a momentary shakeup, but it's more than that. Time's Up has been imploded, but let's be real here. This was a controlled demolition. This wasn't some surprise, didn't come out of the blue. This is what was supposed to happen from the very start. According to Variety's website, Time's Up hired a consultant, Lilani Brown, to conduct a report, which was based on interviews with 85 people connected to the organization. The report addressed the widespread perception that the board failed to actively supervise the CEO. No, that's not right at all. There was no supervision because there was never supposed to be. Now, according to Variety, this report said, quote, employees shared that Time's Up's status as a well-connected organization was a weakness, and that the world needed an organization that is not engaged in or beholden to politics. But notice that no names ever get mentioned. But that's the entire point. Just some very general, very vague, very unspecific chatter about being political. Well, you guys are too beholden to politics, well-connected, too many personal connections. Yeah, but don't say any names who you're connected to or whose politics you're pushing. But here's an interesting thing. The Variety article says that some staffers also complained of a lack of a clear focus on the organization's goals. One interviewee brought up Time's Up's decision to criticize the Hollywood Foreign Press Association for its lack of black members, suggesting that the group had become distracted from its primary mission. Well, ain't that interesting? Apparently, you had one of these Time's Up employees who was interviewed, and what they said was They had a problem with the fact that Time's Up criticized the Hollywood Foreign Press Association for its lack of black members. Well, that lets you know everything you need to know about Time's Up's employees. This is supposed to be about women, not about black people. Damn sure not about black women. That list just let you know these are just a bunch of bigots and racists. This is who that Lisa Borders was working with. Lisa Borders was getting her jollies, pretending to be a big shot with these guys. Variety quotes the report as saying these questions indicated that many didn't fully understand or appreciate the connection of racial justice work to the mission of Time's Up. No, they did understand. Time's Up has nothing to do with racial justice and everything to do with anti-black racism. Next, the article says the report also cited organizational dynamics, such as a failure to adhere to a traditional chain of command and a tendency to form cliques. Well, kind of reminds me of Kamala Harris and that zoo that she's running in the vice president's office. Adhere to a traditional chain of command. We are a sock puppet organization. There is no chain of command. Everything's just horizontal. Everybody knows that. Ain't no chain of command. You're just taking orders. It's all just a hustle, nothing more than that. And a tendency to form cliques. Yeah, so basically we get a bunch of mean girls, we get a bunch of sandbox behavior. To be expected. There's no adults in the room. Finally, the article closes by saying the report does not identify investigative findings, but rather offers 10 key insights on issues such as culture, board governance, and communication. The report advises that it should not be considered the result of an investigation. Now, that's very interesting. The report offers only 10 key insights. Doesn't say anything needs to be done, just here's some ideas, here's some things, here's some things that you might want to be aware of. We're not saying you should actually do anything, mind you. This was meant for public consumption. Meant so that they could say, hey, we brought in somebody named Leilani Brown. And by the way, I looked at that Leilani Brown woman. Basically, she's a public speaker for the most part. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, basically, she's a consultant. As Claude Anderson says, she's high yellow, light skin, whatever you want to say. Claude Anderson would point to this and say another example of a black person who's a professional consultant. Black folks always consult, not running anything, not owning anything, but always consulting. That's always good to see. But that's basically what this was about. Offered up for public consumption. See, we did something. What'd you do? We had 10 key insights. That's very helpful, isn't it? That's exactly what you need of something like this. We need to have 10 key insights. Like something you would expect from a cheap blog. This is exactly what you would expect from a bunch of men who work in movies and television. The predictable third act climax is over. Now it's time for the denouement where we go ahead and close out the show. Nobody's going to take a bow at the end of this performance. We're just drawing the curtains. And so the public gets to see the official watchdog organization of Hollywood end in disgrace. This was no different than a scripted drama. Call it the good guys are no better than the bad guys, which is very helpful to the next Harvey Weinstein or the next Matt Lauer or the next molester Moonves. There's a reason why Julie Chen Moonves didn't leave CBS and nobody expected or required her to. Yeah, they always knew where this was always meant to go. The public will look at the pretend watchdog organization, no different than like in a scripted drama. Here are the official heroines that we are scripting and that we're crafting for our little production. We're going to call them Time's Up. They will be presented as paragons of virtue, and in the end, they will be presented as being as morally putrid as all of those privileged white males who are running around abusing and raping and violating women. They'll be presented as no different. So the public can look and say, man, both sides are dirty. We'll just split the baby and say a pox on both your houses. And that works for all those white men who are used to being able to violate women and sometimes men with impunity. But the rot was already set in the wood a long time ago. They were primed for this from the very jump. It couldn't have ended any other way. Take a look at Lisa Bloom. She was ready to go to the bat for Harvey Weinstein, of all people. Till her mother told her, hey, that's going to put a jinx on our hustle, so you want to fall back with that. Whether or not Time's Up attempts to pretend that it's going to resurrect itself is irrelevant at this point. The public perception has already been set that, well, these women running around talking about these men violating, these white men, these white male executives violating them, well, that's all overblown. Besides, they're running around with them. Like, come on, they knew what they were in for. It's all just one big interconnected web of corruption and cronyism and patronage and nepotism, and you scratch my back and I rub yours. Think of it as hitting a cultural reset button. I would say that the men who run the white media couldn't have handled this one any better if they had written it as a script, except that's exactly what they did. Good day, and be one.